Hello everybody, this is Havoc and welcome again to the Ancient Empires mod. To begin with, I'd like to thank everyone who watched the last video. It shows tremendous support for the mod, and I know the mod team appreciates every single bit of it. They have worked extremely hard to bring this mod to where it is at, and they deserve so much more spotlight than what I alone can give. Today we're going to look at the building browser for the Roman Republic. Now again, I must state and emphasize that this mod, this build that I have is not complete. The campaign does not work fully, but I have been given access to the Roman building pack, which allows me to see the progress of the building browser thus far. There is going to be incomplete information, and that is 100% expected, but there is still a lot of content with the current pack available to me. Now there are over 20 areas of buildings we are going to cover today, so let's dig right on in for the long haul. The main buildings is one area that has not been filled in yet, but is still something that we need to cover. The main buildings will determine how the city is run, and while that may seem like an obvious statement, the Ancient Empires mod goes further by having several options in which to do so. Mainly, we can subjugate our population in which we have taken over. We can force a population to pay tribute. We can deal with socii allies, which is an interesting way to do it. And we can also even remove people entirely from their lands and start a Roman colony. Now this will apply to both the major cities as well as the minor cities. What is fascinating is the variation of options based on the region where the city is taken. For instance, we have the Latin cities. This is Italia. So any Latin-based cities has all of these options right here. We also have your generic major cities. And major cities and minor cities also apply to this as well. So we have our Latins, we have our generic non-Latins, which also have a range of different options to choose from. But we also have some unique provinces, which is really cool to look at. So this is going to be for the major cities. We have more options for the minor cities. But for instance, we have Egypt, which will have its own set. We'll have Syria, which has its own set of options. And Macedonia. Now again, that is for the major provinces only. There are minor provinces down here. So, it's just a really cool aspect, provides a uniqueness, in which case, hopefully, since we don't have the information, hopefully there will be a sort of incentive or a very nice uniqueness, which will kind of give us an incentive for wanting to capture and hold those specific regions. Well, that's it for the major building section. We're going to move on to the slot categories. Roman roads were the backbone in keeping the Roman Empire together. In the Ancient Empires mod, they are broken up into two sectors: private roads for trade, and military roads for military purposes. While both provide a substantial increase in campaign movement range, private roads provide a massive increase in commerce trade, and military roads provide a much higher reinforcement range. This means that nearby allied armies will be more likely to support you in a battle, as reinforcements can answer the call from much further away. Consecrated grounds or temples are pretty straightforward. They are temples to the various deities of the Roman religion. Each deity has its perks, but there are a few of note here. The temple of Mars Ultor was established after the Triumvirate Wars, and as such, it sees an increase of melee attack versus rebel armies, as the god's fervor of killing traitors against Rome was very strong. The Temple of Jupiter Capitolinus is the main temple in Rome, where all triumphs were held and where huge amounts of the spoils of war were deposited, which in turn would go to fund Rome's expanding empire. Last but not least is the Temple of Hercules Victor, which gives boost to about anything in the art of aggression. Note that the last tier of temples will all require the marble resource in order to build it. This is one of many productions that will require you to have resources available in order to build. Industrial workshops increase the money gained from industrial buildings also known as mining operations, by turning the raw materials into something more useful and then turning around and selling it at a higher price. Military workshops provide an increase in ranged ammunition, attack, and armor at the expense of a higher unit recruitment cost in the province. The Money or Mint provides an increase in trade income from tariffs and a higher tax rate. Public land is divided up much like the main buildings are divided. Historically, the allocation of public lands was a constant political battle, one which would shape the laws and formations of the Roman Empire throughout its history. In the mod's current stance, there are three types of public land. Divided assignments were massive tracts of land divided up between Roman legions and were fundamental in establishing several military colonies around the Roman world. Common pastures were giving the poorer average citizens affordable land to till so that they would not slip underneath the poverty line and be ineligible for Roman military service. Finally, we have the estates, which are massive slave-run farms that mass-produce food on an almost industrial scale. Aqueducts in the Ancient Empires mod can serve a multitude of purposes. The bath route provides lots of happiness and sanitation. The industrial aqueducts reduce the construction costs of industrial buildings while increasing the wealth of industrial buildings. And last, we have the agricultural aqueducts, which provide massive boosts to farming income and public order, and these would work perfect in tandem with a province full of estates. Quarries are mines for any resource in the area. Mines will obviously be more valuable where there is more precious resources such as gold, silver, iron, etc., while also reducing the construction costs in the province. The slave market chain brings in slaves into a province, reducing the cost and time for buildings, as well as boosting the income from all main buildings. This chain is best served in high-profit provinces throughout your empire. Forums have two paths to choose from. The first is the market side, allowing for specialized resources to generate more income. The other path is the civic side. This is the city center of a Roman city. It houses markets, meeting places, governing bodies, and courts, all of which generate happiness, income, tax increases, and reduces corruption. The water supply chain is essentially a less impressive version of the aqueducts and is available to all factions, providing sanitation and happiness across the board. Also available but not present in this screen is the desert water line, which increases the fertility of a province. The granary supplies the grain stores mechanic, where Rome can import massive amounts of grain into the city. As we progress down the chain, we see the ability to store that grain, which leads to an increase in siege holdout times. This chain showcases Rome's massive reliance on the shipment of grain to keep its people fed. Public fields are pretty straightforward, as they train troops to be better straight from recruitment, with the highest tiers adding a small but well-trained garrison. However, the city of Rome gets a unique split. It can go the usual training route, or it can go down a monument side, where you can construct buildings such as Pompey's Theater, or the Pantheon, which will give boosts to happiness, provide increased influence, and massively spread Latin culture. Theaters have not been finished in my current build, but we can assume that a massive amount of happiness will be provided, as well as some other related perk. Public games follow two chains, the gladiator games and the chariot races, providing massive amounts of happiness at the expense of increased immigration. It is to note that the Circus Maximus and the Colosseum are to be built in Rome only. Garrisons provide garrisons in cities just as in the vanilla Attila version, while also providing public order, increased tax rate in the higher tiers at the expense of upkeep cost. We at this moment have no idea how large the garrisons will be or what kind of units they will consist of. The local government has 3 chains to follow. The Curia gives massive public order. The Plubicani hands over tons of tax increases at the expense of public order. And the courts reduce corruption. Urban slums provides an interesting game mechanic. They are a quick way to increase your population, which in time will be needed to recruit units. However, they also increase urbanization, immigration, and squalor, so expect a lot of unhappy and unhealthy people. Starting as makeshift towns and smaller slums, they will eventually evolve into proper city districts, rife with corruption of the local governing bodies. The library chain simply provides research rate increases at the expense of research upkeep costs. For ports, we need to go slightly south to the city of Neapolis. There are 2 chains to follow in the port slot. Trading ports import food and income from commerce. Military ports provide the ability to create warships. However, just as in the final tier of temples requires marble, in order to build anything above a trireme warship, you will need access to a wood resource. This provides especially interesting when we take a look at the resource map and note that there are only 3 ports in the eastern part of the map, including the ports of Salamis and Antioch, that have access to a wood resource. These ports will be especially fought over, considering that if you have complete control of these 3 ports, you essentially have complete controls of the Mediterranean. And that is it, everybody. As you can see, the devs for the Ancient Empires mod have worked very hard to bring a sense of historical accuracy to the mod and really create an in-depth campaign through its buildings. And this is only the Roman buildings that I have been given access to. I very much look forward to seeing what the other factions have in store for theirs as well. Well, guys, if you enjoyed this building browser video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Follow me on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Be on the lookout for more Ancient Empires content. And this is Havoc. I'm out of here. Peace!